Alright, hey guys, what's going on? This is Space here, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About Avatar. Alright, so here we go. So we're not talking about the blue people, of course we were talking about the series, and last time we left off we talked about book 1, and here we go. So book 2, I feel like book 2 is really when the show started to get really great. You know, of course it started out good, but then it just got even better in this season. Alright, so the first episode we have today is the Avatar State, starting off the season with a bang. Alright, Aang and his friends arrive in the Earth Kingdom to begin his earthbending training, but a local general convinces Aang that all he needs to do is learn to control his Avatar State. Azula, Zuko's sister, arrives to escort her brother and uncle back to the Fire Nation. That's what it says on IMDb. Alright, so this episode is a great way to start off the season. You know, the end of the first season, of course, ended with Aang going into the Avatar State and defeating the Fire Nation's fleets and saving the North Pole. But now he's really thinking about the Avatar State. He's a little bit afraid of it because it's really a powerful source, and he wasn't able to control it really, and he doesn't have control over it yet. So it's a very dangerous force, and this general guy, I think General Fong, wants to, of course, get him into the Avatar State. There's some pretty fun methods that he does to do it, but also it does have some seriousness to the episode. Like, there's a part at the end where he fakes Katara's death in a way, like makes it look like he killed her, and goes into the Avatar State and he destroys their town outpost thingy. And yeah, it also shows like this is really the first time you get to see the Earth Kingdom, Earth Kingdom's effect on well, the war. You know, like the effect on the Earth Kingdom, the war, the effect of the war on the Earth Kingdom. Yes, there we go. So yeah, that was interesting. You know, you get to see the wounded soldiers and stuff, because in the Earth King episode, the King of Omashu, you don't really get to see the effect of the war on the Earth Kingdom, but you know, it's like right there. The Fire Nation is trying to take over the Earth Kingdom, so you get to see it firsthand, and yeah, that's pretty interesting. And then yeah, Aang feels really guilty and bad about like what he did, but you know, it was the general's fault, but he still felt bad about it. And then you have Azula starting to show up in the episodes. Of course, she was shown at the end of Season 1, as well as she had some appearances here and there throughout the season, but mostly her biggest appearance there was Season 1, and at the end of Book 1. And she goes down, she hunts down her brother and her Uncle Iroh, of course, and she tells them, hey, you guys can come back to the Fire Nation and stuff, as a trap, because she's actually trying to capture them and also get the Avatar too. But then Zuko and Iroh find out, and then they break off, and then in the end you have the scene where they cut off their ponytails and basically give up their Fire Nation Navy sort of deal there. Now they're not with their ship or anything, now they're just on their own in the wild trying to survive in the Earth Kingdom. So yeah, there you go. That was pretty cool. I like the arc that they start with Zuko, especially in this season. Zuko's arc is really good in this season, and everyone's arc is really good in this season, but especially Zuko, I'd say. Next, we have the Cave of Two Lovers. So, according to IMDb, it says, on their way to Omashu, Team Avatar is forced to travel underground to avoid Fire Nation attacks. Iroh and Zuko adjust to life as fugitives. So, adjust to life as fugitives. So this episode is pretty fun. This is where the Secret Tunnel song comes into effect. If you haven't heard that, I highly recommend checking out this episode just for that. But, so yeah, you have this band of traveling nomads, and they take Aang and Katara and Sokka into this cave because the Fire Nation is after them, and they attack them, and they run into the cave, and the cave is cursed. Apparently there's no way to get out. Only true love will lead you out of there. And it's a pretty funny episode. And eventually, Katara gets separated with Aang from the rest of the group, and I think Momo's with them, but you know. So they find out the legend of why that place was made. You know, there are these two lovers from different families, kind of Romeo and Juliet, and eventually one of them, the man dies in war, I think, and then the woman is really upset, and then the man's name, one of them's named Oma, and one of them's named Shu, and they come together. And then the woman makes her own little kingdom, and she calls it Omashu, and that's how Omashu was made. And eventually, they figure out that the only way to get out is to, you know, kiss. So they kiss in the dark as their lights fade. They have these torches that only last a certain amount of time. The torches fade, and then all of a sudden you see a bunch of crystals lighting the path out of the way. And the other guy, Sokka, of course, is stuck with the nomad troop, which is driving him crazy. And how they get out is they find badger moles, and the badger moles take them out. They lead them out to safety. And the badger moles, of course, are the original earth benders. Each element has a different or origination for bending. Like, of course, the dragons are for the fire element, and then you have the sky bison for air. You have the badger moles for earth, and then of course you have the moon for water bending. So yeah, so you get to see the badger moles. This of course has more of a focus on the Earth Kingdom, as it is called Book 2 Earth, and of course because Aang is also trying to learn earth bending. And yeah, so that's a pretty fun episode. And then at the end of the episode, you find out that Omashu has been taken over by the Fire Nation. It's a really big reveal. You're like, oh, geez. So that leads us to the next episode, a very good episode. All these episodes have been great so far, but this one is like really good. This one I always remember like very vividly. So you have Return to Omashu. So Aang tries to look for King Bumi and to free him from Omashu, which of course, like I said before, is captured by the Fire Nation. And so they go inside to the kingdom, and they of course, like I said, try to rescue him, and they find out that of course the civilians are there and they're kind of stuck there. So they come up with this plan. They have these little like octopus things, like they're really small. I don't remember what they're called exactly, but then they give all of the citizens pentapox, like a disease that's actually just the dots from these little octopus guys, and yeah, that's how they escape. It's pretty funny. There's also a really awesome fight scene in this episode. May's little brother is captured, quote-unquote captured, by the rebellion group, the earthbending rebellion group that Aang and his gang meets, and they're all upset and they're worried about him. But really what happened is that he followed Momo back to them, and so now they have to deal with him. So what they do is they set up a trade, the kid for King Bumi. So Ty Lee, May, and Azula go and meet Aang and his friends, and they do the trade-off, but then they realize, trading the baby for his almighty Earth King isn't very good trade, So they decide to attack them, and Aang gets away with King Bumi, and then he says, hey, I'm not ready to go yet, I still need to stay here. He talks about there's like there's positive Jin when you attack, and negative Jin, or negative Jin when you retreat, and then there's also neutral Jin when you do nothing. And he says he's doing that, and he's waiting for the perfect time to strike so he can take back his kingdom. So Aang leaves him there, he returns the sun, and all is well. Yeah, so it's a pretty good episode. I really like it. I like it. The idea of you've got the rebellion going on for the Earth, for Omashu really, and yeah, just all of that happening is really awesome, and it has some funny moments too, of course. And then next we have the swamp. The swamp is a very important episode, but also I've noticed that it's one of the least liked episodes. It's not like super disliked, but it has like a 78 compared to like the rest of these, which have 8s and 9s, except for the next one, which even has a lower score. But yeah, so basically what happens is that Aang hears the swamp calling to him, and he goes down. He's like, no, let's keep on moving, guys. And then a tornado appears, and they get sucked into the swamp. In the swamp, they see visions, like Katara sees her mother, Sokka sees Yue, and then Aang sees someone he doesn't know, who is this blind girl with a flying pig. That comes into play pretty soon, actually, but for now, they realize the swamp is alive. Well, of course the swamp is alive, but it's kind of like some supernatural force going on in there, and they kind of explore and try to find a way out. And they run into these swamp benders, which are like different types of water benders. They live in the swamp. They bend swamp water instead of just like plain old water, like in the North and South Pole. And they're after Appa and Momo because of course they're hungry. Team Avatar though runs into this like great and evil looking monster, the seaweed monster guy thing or whatever, like this vine monster, and it turns out it's just this guy. He's just there living in the swamp. He's really connected with the swamp, and he teaches Aang that the whole swamp is connected, like it's all just this one big tree that just like sprouted up and then has like multiple trees growing out of it and stuff. So Aang uses that to find Appa and Momo. They save them from the swamp benders, and they make friends with the swamp benders too, And yeah, so it's a pretty good episode. It's really important in terms of Aang's vision to the very near future in a few episodes. So this next episode we have here is one that I noticed is, I think, probably the most hated out of all of this season. Like, I don't want to say hated, like everyone's just like, oh, it's just so bad. No, but like, it's the one that people, I guess, like the least out of all the episodes in this season. And I've got to say, I really like it. It's a great episode, I think. It's called Avatar Day. Now, they go to this kingdom, and they see these giant floats of avatars being burned. You know, you have Avatar Roku, you have Avatar Kyoshi, and then you even have Aang. Yep, they get burned because apparently the city is very mad at the Avatar because in the past they killed their great leader, Chin the Conqueror. Avatar Kyoshi killed Chin the Conqueror. They find out that Aang is the Avatar and they arrest him and give him a trial based on what Kyoshi did. So while Aang is in jail, of course, Katara and Sokka look for facts and all this evidence. They go to Kyoshi Island and try to figure out what happened exactly. And they hold the trial. You know, it's pretty funny moments there, of course, with Sokka leading the trial for Aang. Aang wears all of Kyoshi's stuff, hoping to get Kyoshi there herself, and eventually she does come, and she explains that she did indeed kill Chin the Conqueror because he was a bad boy, and she separated an entire island away from their land and created Kyoshi Island herself. So, yeah, and then, of course, Chin the Conqueror died. He was just standing there, and he just fell to his death like an idiot, and yes. So that is what happened, and then of course they are like, wow, she just admitted it, and then they're like, alright, let's kill him. So they bring out this wheel of punishments, and he gets boiled in oil. But suddenly, these guys are called the Rough Rhinos, led by, I think his name is Colonel Monkey, who has like some connection to Iroh or something. I forget exactly how he's connected, but he has some interesting history behind him for such a small character. But anyways, so they come, they attack the village, and then the guy running it is like, alright, you know, Aang, just community service, get these Rough Rhinos out of here. So Aang does it. He does it dressed as Kyoshi too, which is really cool. And yeah, and then in the end they win, and yeah. So overall, I think it's a fun episode. I really enjoyed, especially the Avatar Kyoshi stuff. I like Kyoshi, and it's interesting learning more about the Avatars. And I think this episode is a little underrated. I thought it was a fun episode. Anyways, so here we go. We're on to oftentimes considered one of the best episodes. And after that, we have oftentimes considered one of the best episodes as well. This book is filled with really great episodes, but these next two ones are just so amazing. First off, we have the Blind Bandit. This is the very first introduction of Toph. So basically, Aang is looking for an earthbending teacher, and they come across this small earth kingdom, and they hear about this underground earthbending tournament. You know, this like kind of like WrestleMania or whatever, but with earthbending. So you've got some funny characters. Like you've got the Boulder, which of course is a parody of The Rock, and he's so amazing. And you've got just some really cool guys that appear in the future. And then you see Toph, this blind girl, fighting. Or the Blind Bandit, I should say. Her name is the Blind Bandit in the fighting area. And, you know, she wins. She wins really well. She's really good at earthbending, and Aang realizes that this could be the person that he saw in his vision, and he fights her. They go up, and then he asks if she would teach him earthbending, and she, of course, says no. And then they try to find her again, and then Aang remembers the flying boar, and they figure out that's the symbol of the Bei Thongs, a very rich and powerful family in the Earth Kingdom. And they go there, and yeah, they find out that Toph is actually, you know, she comes from like a rich family and stuff, and yeah, and they think that she's really innocent and like can't really earthbend that well, but it's very wrong. She's just, like actually like one of the most powerful earthbenders in like the entire series. Actually, probably is the most powerful earthbender in the entire series. They try to convince her to come, but her father won't let her. But then eventually, she does just kind of run away, and then, yeah, so that's how Toph was introduced to the series. She's an amazing character, and I'm really glad she joined up, you know? And this leads to some good conflict, too, especially between Toph and Katara. They don't get along quite as well in the beginning, but, yes. So, next up we have Zuko Alone, oftentimes considered probably, like, I don't know, maybe, like, top 5 best episodes. It's very highly rated, and for a good reason, too. Zuko breaks off from Iroh eventually. I don't remember when he does that exactly, but he does that, and he's just on his own, you know, Zuko Alone. He runs into this family, and they get to know him, and Zuko is kind of struggling with his past, like remembering all these things, like his mother and Azula and all of that. And yeah, he really connects with the kid, and then eventually the kid is kidnapped by these guys, these earthbending guys that are, you know, kind of just jerks and run the town. And Zuko goes to save him, and this is really when he realizes who he is. He proclaims that he is Prince Zuko, heir to the throne of the Fire Nation, and, you know, the kid really hates him for it because his brother, the kid's brother, was supposedly killed in action in a fight against the Firebenders, or the Fire Nation today. So yeah, that wasn't a very good explanation of this episode, but you really should see this episode if you haven't seen it. It is so amazing, and yes, you get to see like Zuko Alone. You know, you don't usually see Zuko on his own that much. You see him usually with Uncle Iroh or with some other people, but this episode it's really just him. So there we go. Yeah. Next up, we have the chase. This one is pretty simple. Azula and her band of female warriors keep on tracking down the Team Avatar, the newly formed Team Avatar. You've got some friction between Toph and Katara. They're kind of mad at each other because Toph isn't pulling her weight, and she's just like, oh, I'm pulling my own weight, I am, but she's not actually helping out with anyone else. So yeah, they just kind of get mad at each other. And, they make up in the end, though. It all works out. But they get really angry, and they're, like, really tired and sleep-deprived because there's a trail of smoke coming from this vehicle that Azula and her girls are in. So they keep on tracking them, and it turns out that they're tracking him because Appa is shedding. Aang takes some of Appa's fur. They wash Appa and clean him up so he's not shedding anymore. Aang leads the trail to Azula, and they fight. Now, before this, actually, when Toph storms off, she finds Iroh, and they get together, and they kind of have, like, just a nice, relaxing time. Iroh talks about Zuko, how he's following Zuko, and, they just kind of meet and become friends. So then, eventually, in the city where Aang and Azula fight, Zuko comes there, too, and is ready to attack Aang, as well as Azula a little bit. Sokka, Katara, and now Toph come to Aang's aid for backup, and then Uncle Iroh comes too. They all surround Azula, but Azula gets away by using lightning on Uncle Iroh, and then Katara's like, I could help him, but then Zuko's really mad and just tells him to leave. And yes, that's a really cool scene. Pretty iconic scene, I'd say, is when all of them are just surrounding Azula. It's very cool. And yes, overall, a pretty great episode, The plot is fairly simple, but it has like some really great moments in it that just really make it a memorable episode. Alright, next we have Bitter Work. This is where Aang tries to learn earthbending from Toph, and this is where he finally does actually earthbend. Aang kind of has a block with earthbending because it's different than air. Air is about avoiding and evading, while earth is about standing your ground and fighting. Toph tries to train him, but nothing is really sticking. So eventually, Sokka is looking for some food, and he gets stuck in this little crevice while he's trying to get this like little guy, this little like I forget what it is, like a moose bear or something like that. It's just a little cub he tries to kill, but he just falls into this crevice and he's stuck there. And, the little cub is kind of tantalizing Sokka and kind of egging him on. And then Aang eventually comes. He tries to save him, but he can't because he doesn't know how to earthbend yet. And the mother of this little cub comes and runs at Aang, but Aang stands his ground and he saves Sokka. Yes. And then he's like unlocked earthbending now as he stood his ground. And yeah, so yeah, there you go. That's when Aang first really starts to earthbend, which is really cool. And next up, we have another amazing episode. That episode's pretty good, too. I think this one is amazing. You've got the library. Now, the library, what happens is that everyone is choosing these fun little activities to do, little vacations. Aang went to this place where they have, like, these little meerkats that can make music, which is pretty funny. And then you have, I think it may have been Katara that wants to go to the Misty Palms Oasis, which is just like this, used to be really good, but now it's just like a pile of ice, and that's about it. You can get these cold drinks and stuff. And then they find this guy, this professor of Ba Sing Se University, and he tells them about this library. And Sokka wants to go to the library in hopes of finding a weakness to the Fire Nation. This is really where the ball starts rolling. This is basically a critical point for the entire series. This is where they finally decide like what they're going to do about the Fire Nation and how to take care of them. So yes, so they go to this library. They find it eventually. It turns out it was buried in sand, and they found like a piece of it. They go inside. Toph stays outside though with Appa, and they go in, and the library is owned by Wang Shitong. He's this like owl guy, this owl spirits that allows mortals to look at his library, but they have to pay a price. They have to give him knowledge to add to his library. They all do it, and Sokka just gives him like a piece of rope and a knot that he's tied. And so they start looking for the library. The library is very vast and huge, and Sokka finds this map room with the help of these little helpers, these like fox helpers that help people find stuff in the library. He finds this piece of paper that says that the darkest day in Fire Nation history, and it has a date on it. And they go to this little calendar thing, this calendar room, and they find out that that day there was a eclipse, a solar eclipse, and the firebenders couldn't firebend because their energy is drawn from the sun. Then Wang Shitong finds out that they're using his knowledge to attack another nation. Like, he doesn't want any war. He just wants everyone to use the knowledge for like I guess academic reasons and stuff, but then he finds out they're using it for the war. He gets mad, he starts to take down the library, and Sokka quickly runs to the map room and figures out when the next eclipse is, the next solar eclipse, and then they escape. Now it's also important to note that the reason that Wang Shitong is mad about this, mad about about mortals trying to use this his knowledge against other nations for wars, because Admiral Zhao once went there and he burned down all of the Fire Nation stuff, the stuff on the Fire Nation, so that's why he's mad. So they get out and they have a plan. They're going to go to Ba Sing Se to convince the Earth Kingdom and the Earth King to get their forces together and to fight the Fire Nation on the next solar eclipse, which they call the Day of the Black Sun. And then, unfortunately though, they find out that Appa has been stolen by Sandbenders. And this is where the sad Aang without Appa arc starts. So alright, so next we have, following right after the episode, we have the desert. So all of them are stuck in the desert without Appa, and they just try to make it through. And, you know, they're looking for Appa. Aang is really upset that Appa is gone, of course, since it's his lifetime companion. And they look around and they try to make it out of the deserts. And eventually they find this old sand-bending, like, sailboat kind of raft thing. And they bend. Aang uses air to send them out of the desert. Now, this episode is fairly serious, but Sokka really lightens it up by eating a cactus and just kind of hallucinating on it. It's pretty funny. So yes, a pretty darn awesome episode. A very good follow-up to the library. Fits in perfectly. They run into the Sandbenders, and Aang gets really upset, of course. He goes into the Avatar State. They find out that they sold him to some guy in Ba Sing Se. So now they have another reason to go to Ba Sing Se, which leads us to the next episode, which is the Serpent's Pass. Now, they get these tickets to the ferry to Ba Sing Se thanks to the help of Toph. But unfortunately, they run into these other people, these small family of refugees. One of them is pregnant, and the other one is just the husband. And unfortunately, they aren't able to get tickets to get on the ferry, so they decide to go to Serpent's Pass, which is a dangerous way to get into Ba Sing Se. But they sacrifice their tickets to help these people, and they also meet Suki along the way too. Suki is there working with, you know, just like the people there, like the guards, the Kyoshi warriors are there. Helping out the fairies and stuff, and she helps them and takes them with along the way to the Serpent's Pass. And, you know, they get there, there's this giant serpent, of course, that's why it's called Serpent's Pass, and they have to quickly get across to the other side, and yes. When they make it to the other side, though, the refugee wife is going into labor, and then Katara helps deliver the baby, and they name it Hope, and then that gives Aang hope, too. He's like, he suddenly feels a sense of hope. This whole time he's been feeling really down about Appa and their chances of finding him in such a big city. But yes, so then Aang goes to find Appa. He flies ahead of the group, and they'll meet him there in Ba Sing Se, and he finds that there is a huge drill headed for the Earth Kingdom wall of Ba Sing Se, and that's when he flies back. He's like, guys, we got a big problem. This leads to the drill, a very awesome episode. So Azula has this drill that's headed straight for Ba Sing Se, trying to get through the wall of Ba Sing Se. And Team Avatar is up to the task to stop it. They go inside, they break it from the inside, and eventually Aang has to fight Azula, and he breaks the drill. Yes, that was a pretty fast explanation of what happens in this episode, but it's a very awesome episode. Very, you know, just a great episode, I'd say. It's really great. It's kind of like a mid-season finale, because the rest of the season they are in Ba Sing Se, you know? They've arrived at Ba Sing Se, and they stay there until the end of the last episode of the season. So next we have City of Walls and Secrets, which is just kind of establishing everything that's going on in Ba Sing Se. They go to seek an audience with the Earth King, but they can't yet because, you know, he's busy and stuff, and they have to wait a month. And they get introduced to Judy, who is their caretaker, and there's like just a lot of like mysterious things going around in this episode. Like Jet is in the city too. Before he was helping, him and his group, his freedom fighters, were going to Ba Sing Se to seek refuge, and he finds that Iroh and Zuko are there too. This is an episode or two before. Zuko helps him out. Zuko helps Jet steal some food from the captain of the ferry because the captain is really greedy and they don't really get any good food. So he helps them out, and then they give food to the people. And yeah, so once they make it to the city, Uncle Iroh and Zuko find some work at a tea shop. But Jet witnessed Uncle Iroh potentially firebending. He heated up his cold tea at one point, and he now Jet is watching them and seeing if they are firebenders. He's really convinced that they are firebenders. He attacks Zuko on the streets, and he gets arrested by the Dai Li, these secret kind of like these police guys that take care of the kingdom, and they take Jet to this place where they brainwashed him. So yeah, there's like some dark stuff going on in the city. Then we have this another really awesome episode. It's called Tales of Ba Sing Se. It's this small collection of stories from each character. You start off with Katara and Toph getting to just, having some girl time. They don't usually have girl time, so they get to go out and like do their makeup, and these groups of girls this group of girls makes fun of Toph, and they kind of just she earthbends them into the water, and it's just kind of a wholesome moment. Toph feels good about herself, and yeah, pretty good. But it gets better from here. Now I'm doing this off of memory, so I might be wrong, but I think this is how it goes. It looks like, and also on IMDb, it looks like it has the exact order too. I think this is the right order. So next we have Iroh, really crushing tale. It starts off very happy. Iroh is getting ready for this picnic, and he just runs across these people, and he helps these people out throughout the way. There's one crying child. He plays the song for him, and it makes him happy, and he pulls his beard. He also runs across this thief that tries to steal his money, but he notices that his stance is weak, and he just takes him down easily, and he has a cup of tea with him, and tells him about life, and just tries to convince him to be on a better path. And then eventually he goes to this tree for the picnic, and he's all by himself. And the song that he sung to the kid, which was more happy and like more fast-paced, he slows it down, and he sings it to a picture of his son who died when they were trying to invade Ba Sing Se years ago. And yeah, it's a very emotional scene, probably one of the saddest scenes in the series. And then we go on to a happier scene, which we have Sokka finding this poetry club filled with girls, and they're doing haikus, and he manages to do a lot of haikus against this one headmistress person that's leading the group, and he kind of wins in the end. It's like a battle of wits, and he actually wins, but then eventually he says another haiku, but it turns out he's wrong, and this guy's like, that's one syllable too much, bub, or whatever, and he throws him out of the poetry reading. It's pretty great. It's part of the episode, pretty funny. And at the beginning he says, poetry, and then at the end he says, poetry. It's great. And then next we have Aang, which is also a pretty wholesome part too. Aang sees like this zoo. All these animals are kind of stuffed into tight cages, and they're not very happy. And Aang says, hey, why don't we get these guys out of here and into like a bigger zoo? And the guy says, I wish I could, but we can't afford it. So Aang, leads them all out of the city and makes this zoo for them, and it's pretty great. He uses his the Sky Bison whistle, and it gets all of the animals in the city to come with him. And yeah, it's a pretty cool episode. Aang just saving the animals. Next up, we have Zuko, another great episode, or great piece of this episode. There's this girl that's interested into him. I think her name is June or something. I forget exactly, but she's really interested in him. And Iroh manages to convince him to go on a date with her. And they have their date. It's a little awkward, but then in the end, they have this. There's this little place that is very beautiful at night. They light lanterns, but unfortunately the lanterns haven't been lit. So Zuko tells her to close her eyes, and he lights all of the lanterns for her, and it's kind of a romantic scene. She goes to kiss Zuko, but then he says he can't, and then the date sort of ends. But in the end, he comes home. Uncle Iroh asks, how was the date? And then he slams his door. But then Zuko pops it open and he said it was nice. And yeah, it's a great scene. That's where you get, if you've seen this picture of Uncle Iroh smiling, that's where that comes from. And then the last one is another sadder one, another crushing one actually. So Momo gets captured by this like animal guy. This like, I don't know what he is, like a kind of dog catcher, but he like catches like wild animals running around the city. And eventually Momo frees himself from it, and he frees like these two like dog-like things, or cat. Oh no, I actually think they're like cats that were chasing him. They were chasing him because Momo found this piece of fur that looked like Appa's fur, so he got really hopeful and he tried to follow it and tried to find where Appa was, but then of course he gets attacked by these cats and he runs away, and of course he gets captured. And then he frees those guys, and they're friends now. And yeah, Momo's flying around, and he sees this giant paw print that looks like Appa's foot. Then you get the last image, which is really sad, which is just Momo sitting there curling up his tail inside Appa's footprint. Yes, he misses Appa. And next this leads in directly into Appa's lost days. This tells the tale of how Appa was stolen and what happened afterwards. So he was stolen by these sandbenders, and he was sold to this circus where he was treated very poorly, and eventually he escapes out of the circus and he runs away. He runs to the Kyoshi Island, and they kind of take care of him. They treat him and heal him because he got injured and stuff from everything, from running around. He was all dirty and stuff too, but they take care of him. Then Azula and her firebenders attack, and Appa runs away. And eventually he gets captured again, this time by Long Feng. Now Long Feng is the leader of the Dai Li, is introduced, I believe, in City of Walls and Secrets. He's kind of the guy that really runs Ba Sing Se. It's not the Earth King. The Earth King is just a puppet. He's really the guy behind it all. And next we get pretty close. We're pretty close to the end. We've got Lake Lao Guy. This is a pretty darn awesome episode too. This is oftentimes considered one of the best episodes too of the series. And this is where Aang and his company encounter Jet and Ba Sing Se, and he helps them figure out where Appa is. They find this huge secret called Lake Lao Guy, where some really interesting stuff goes on. That's where Jet was brainwashed, and they find out that all of the Judies, there's multiple Judies. They're actually just a bunch of women that were mind controlled basically and hypnotized. And yeah, now they serve the Earth King, and yeah, it's kind of creepy. And then they go into this secret underground base, and they find Appa eventually. And Zuko also goes down there too, because I think he's following Aang or something. I don't remember exactly why he goes down there, but he figures out that there's a secret place there too, and he finds Appa. And he takes him up to the surface, and then Uncle Iroh also followed him too, also followed Zuko, and he's like, this is where you decide who you are, and he gives him this really great speech, which I can't really give justice to, but it's really great. It's a very amazing moment, and this is where Zuko really starts to change as a person, and he lets Appa go free, and then he finds Aang. But before this, sadly, they get into the Long Feng is down there, and Jet gets mind controlled by him. He says a phrase Jet's the Earth King would like to invite you to Lake Lao Guy, and he says, I happily accept. He has to fight Aang, and he eventually breaks free though. He breaks out of it, and he tries to kill Long Feng, but Jet dies in the process. It's a really great scene. Jet remembers who he is, and it's great, and but sadly he dies. He's one of the few characters who actually die in the series, and it's quite tragic. That episode overall is amazing. I really enjoy it. And the next episode I think isn't as good, but it's still good. It's called The Earth King. They finally get an audience with the Earth King, and they try to convince him that Long Feng is bad and there's a war going on that he didn't know about. He doesn't know about the war at all. So they show him, and they bring him up to speed. And while all this is going on, Zuko is kind of going through this phase where he's really confused by who he is, and he's in this fever, and he's just having an identity crisis, and it's a very good part of his arc. In the end, Long Feng is arrested, but the Dai Li say that they're on his side, not the Earth King's side, so yeah, they're kind of screwed. But now we have a more aware Earth King who is now ready to get everything ready for the invasion of Black Sun, which is Sokka's plan to take down the Fire Nation during the solar eclipse. Next up, we have the Guru. Now, the Earth King reveals that there are a bunch of, or I'm not sure who it is, but someone reveals that there were a bunch of things that Long Feng was keeping from Team Avatar. There's a letter from Toph's mom that says that she wants to meet her in the city, that she's there. There's also a report that I think it's in Chameleon Bay that Sokka's dad is in. That's not very far away from Ba Sing Se. There's also the scroll that Appa, that was tied to Appa's horn from this Guru that wants to see Aang about the Avatar states. This is something I forgot to mention in Appa's Lost Days, is that he goes to, I believe it's the Western Earth Temple, or the Eastern Earth Temple, or sorry, Air Temple, not Earth Temple, and he finds this Guru there that shows him where Aang is. That's why he goes to Ba Sing Se. He ties around this message to Appa's horn, and then Appa flies off to Ba Sing Se, but in the process he gets captured by Long Feng. That's where he gets captured by Long Feng. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. But that is given back to Aang, and they all decide they have to split up. Katara stays with the Earth King and Ba Sing Se, all of the people there, and just tries to help them out and figure out the invasion plan and whatever. And then Sokka goes to Chameleon Bay to be with his dad. It's a great scene. They're reunited. And then Aang goes off to talk to this guru, and we'll get to that in a second. The episode is called The Guru, since that's the main focus. But Toph also gets captured by these two guys that were after her. This one guy is her earthbending teacher. The other guy is like the head of the kind of like earth wrestling tournament thingy-mabob. And they're mad, and they get gold. They're paid by Toph's dad to track her down, and they eventually, now they capture her. You know, it's been kind of an arc that goes on through a few episodes. I think it starts back in The Blind Bandit, and then it goes all the way up to here where they finally capture her. And okay, so with Aang. So Aang goes to this guru and he teaches him how to unlock his chakras. His chakras are blocked, that's why he can't control the avatar state. So he tells him how to do it. There's like a few chakras, I don't remember how many there are, like 8 or something. They unlock them, and then the last one he has to unlock by getting rid of like his earthly tether. And he's like, he doesn't want to do this because he's really connected to Katara. He doesn't want to let her go, but he says that he has to. And then while he's trying to do this, he finds out that Katara is in danger. It turns out that the Dai Li are taking down all of these Earth Kingdom generals and trying to take control of Ba Sing Se and release Long Feng. So he finds out that Katara is in danger, and he leaves with the possibility of him never being able to go back into the Avatar state. And then this leads us into the final episode. Amazing finale of this season. Probably the best episode, in my opinion, of this entire season. It's very good, and I'd say one of the best episodes of the series. That is the Crossroads of Destiny. This one. So Aang escapes from the, I think it's the Western Air Temple, or I forget if it's the Eastern or Western. But one of them is the upside down one. The other one is just like the normal one where the Guru lives, Guru Patik. And Aang goes and gets Sokka, and they go and find Toph. Toph broke out of her metal containment unit. Now this is really big because metal bending wasn't invented yet. There's no way to bend metal, but Toph finds the little pieces of earth inside the metal, the impurities of the metal, and manages to bend it. It was really impressive. And then they find Toph. They all get together. They go to Ba Sing Se, and they look for Katara. And it's funny because in the beginning of the Guru episode, they're just like excited, like, oh, hey, this is great. There are girls waiting for us, because the Kyoshi warriors actually came to help the Earth King. But it turns out the Kyoshi warriors aren't actually like Suki and her gang. It's actually Ty Lee, Azula, and Mei, which is like, that's how the episode, that's how the Guru ends. So now they figured out that they have taken over the Earth Kingdom, and Zuko tries to stop her too, but then he gets arrested, and Iroh escapes, but Zuko gets captured. So Zuko is down in this crystal cavern with Katara underneath the center ring of Ba Sing Se, and you know, they kind of start to get to know each other, and he shows her that he's not all that bad of a guy. Like she starts to believe him, but then Aang appears, and then they get into a fight with Azula. Azula's down there too, and yes, this leads them to like this kind of unwinnable fight with all of the Dai Li and everyone down there. And Aang is forced to let go of Katara. He goes into the Avatar state thinking that he can actually win this battle, but then the worst happens. Azula uses lightning and hits him in the back, and he goes down. Like, he could have actually died. And Katara escapes as fast as she can and gives Aang the spirit's water from the oasis in the North Pole. So she gets that. She uses that on Aang. She was going to use it on Zuko to heal his scar, but then she decides to use it on Aang. She saves it for Aang, and thankfully she did, instead of healing Zuko, because then Aang probably would have been dead. So that happens, and then Aang is shown to be alive, but he's like very weak, and that's where the episode ends. The Earth King escapes with them too, because Ba Sing Se has fallen to the Fire Nation. It's a very interesting episode, very awesome episode too. It's like very concerning, and it really sets it all up and gets you ready for book 3. Now Zuko has the chance of being with his uncle or siding with Azula. He decides to side with Azula, and he feels really bad about it. That really starts his arc too, on the path to goodness. But yeah, so that's where Zuko is. In the end, he's now back to the Fire Nation. He's headed back to the Fire Nation. So there we go. That was book 2. Book 2 is amazing. Like I said before, it's really when I think they started to like hit their stride. The first book was great. This one, like all of the episodes seemed to like fit together and just really make it all work. You know, the first season had like some random episodes that are important, but this one really is where everything just like kind of like fit all together and was like more linear. So yes, so next time we'll be talking about the final season. What in the season it is. It's very amazing. There's actually 21 episodes instead of 20, so there's more to talk about. Then after that, of course, we'll be talking about The Legend of Korra. So thank you guys for watching. We enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.